Welcome to the Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago's first online conference in collaboration with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. As you know, the theme of our conference is the future of online learning quality, best practices in artificial intelligence and competency-based credentialing.
Welcome to Roundtable 1 entitled Artificial Intelligence Partners. I now invite our first presenter, Dr. James Carmichael, to make his presentation. Dr. Carmichael.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to all. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks so much for giving me this opportunity. Okay, as my mom would say, without further ado or adas, let's roll into this one. So my talk, my little chat with you will be about the area of grading the oral exam component of the CSEC examinations. So hold a second, I'm trying to, oh yeah, here we go. So this might sound a bit incredible, but it appears to me, from what knowledge I have, that the Caribbean Examinations Council secondary school oral exams, mostly in French and Spanish, those exams are not recorded. To be clear, the students or the exam candidates, as they're parlaying Francais and hablar en Español, their exam responses, their oral responses, are not recorded. Now that is not in keeping with most examination bodies. For example, I believe that the A-level exams, at least for the A-level exams hosted by the University of Cambridge, of course, they are recorded. I know for sure that the IELTS exams in English proficiency, they're also recorded. I had to actually sit one of them myself. So it is rather unusual, regrettably so, that these oral exams are not recorded in any systematic way, because what happens if there is going to be a dispute, as we had this year? What do you do? Well, in the case of the oral exam component, all that happens is that they pull out the actual mark sheet of the person who had done the mark in the first place, the oral examiner, and you simply tot up the raw scores once again. There is no scope or no avenue to actually revisit the oral exam or the candidate's responses in the oral exam. I dare say not good enough. So what do we do? What's the next step? Or what is a possible solution? Well, let's talk about, let's say, the most basic solution, which is, you know, get out the old 1960s style analog tape recorder, press the old record button and hope for the best. Not very 21st century, first of all, to actually transfer recordings of such analog tape recorders. It would mean, of course, sending a bunch of microcassettes all the way to some central repository, mostly, I don't know, mostly probably somewhere in Trinidad or maybe Barbados. Very time consuming. The information that would be in these repositories would not be easily searchable. So let's not consider that option anymore. A more advanced solution, of course, would be the recording, or would be the digital recording of such material. Then you can easily, shall we say, have the material stored in some central server, and at least you could then have somebody else who's in a remote location could easily then, in the case of a dispute, just access those recordings from a database, presumably, and have a look. But there is one issue about subjective evaluation of any examination response, and that is what is called as, or what is known as, psychometric weakness. Psychometric weakness basically is the vulnerability of a subjective grader or a subjective evaluator to be prejudiced by such things as previous exposure to a speaker's style. So for example, I never forgot that when I did my Spanish CXCs, they were called CXCs back in the day, I remember my teacher saying, you know, young Carmichael, I can't see you getting past anything looking like a grade 2. Your accent is atrocious. With great trepidation, therefore, I did the exam. And the unofficial comment when I had left the exam room and the examiner had an informal word with my teacher, my teacher came back to me and said, young Carmichael, it appears that your accent is very good. I don't know why the examiner feels that way. This just goes to show that you know, two individuals assessing the same attempt or the same performance can arrive at very or substantially different conclusions. So that is a cue, my kind of clumsy cue, to say that let's introduce a little bit of AI, artificial intelligence, into the assessment mix. So I propose to you, if you'll have me, the idea of using a form of artificial intelligence, which is known as automatic speech recognition, to evaluate these digital audio recordings, to automate these digital recordings of the oral attempts of CXC candidates during the infamous paper 3 of the CSEC foreign languages examinations. So what exactly, so what exactly would take place? So now in your basic exam room or in the oral examination chamber, you would have, as you can see here, the examiner, the fetching looking young lady on the left, will not only sit with her usual pencil, paper, and a keen ear. Now she would sit with a computer. And that computer would also serve as a digital audio recording device. Let's take one of the components of the oral exam, which is the reading passage, whereby a candidate will read a passage in Spanish or French or whatever the target L2 languages, foreign languages, and the candidate should read this passage with some degree of expression, correct pronunciation, and so on and so forth. In this case, the person is saying, pero este perro no me gusta. For those of you who may not know Spanish, there is P-E-R-O, pero, which means but, and then there is P-E-R-R-O, perro, which means dog. So the person is saying, in effect, but I don't like this dog. Don't worry, it was just an example that he chose. Now, what we're gonna have here is an ASR application. So what we'll be having here is that the oral examiner, of course, will continue with her subjective evaluation and make her due annotations. But in parallel with this will be an ASR application installed in the laptop computer. And what that will do, that will, the ASR application will be based on a type of AI, paradigm known as a hidden Markov model. The ASR application, if you can go forward here, what the ASR application does, it builds statistical models, what we call everyman models. So it tries to build statistical models of speech samples. So let's say in the case of what we have here, the person saying, pero este perro no me gusta. The AI or the ASR application will build statistical models of the word dog. So you get about maybe 100 Spanish speakers or native Spanish speakers to actually utter pero, 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 pero. I'm trying to imitate a range of normal speakers saying that word. And then the ASR application will build statistical models to model what the word dog, perro, should sound like in Spanish. This collection of speech samples is what will be known as training data. So the ASR, the speech recognition software, is trained on typical speech utterances from native speakers. And then after the training session will come the testing session. So you will use some test data to make sure that the ASR engine is recognizing correctly. Now, what we have here, if we can go on here, is that the ASR application can work in what is known as forced alignment mode. In forced alignment mode, what you do is you compare, or the ASR application compares each incoming utterance, each word or each connected speech sample, and then it tries to calculate a probability or a probability score of, is this incoming word pero? Is this incoming word likely to be the speech sample that is stored in my vocabulary? So let's take, for example, this speech sample here. Let's see if you can play it. Let's go again. Yes, that's me. No, this is me trying to say a bad but. Let's do it again. So the person is saying pero, almost if he's saying payroll. No, the ASR application would have been trained on speech samples of how the word, well, two words, the words dog, which is perro, and the word but, pero. So the speech sample that is incoming from the candidate is this one. And the ASR application will compare this one. Hold a second, I'm trying to get it. Yeah, here we go. Or this one. It's a bit softer. So basically, what happens then is that if we can go here again, the ASR application will produce a probability score, and it will basically indicate what words the candidate mispronounced and what is a possible conversion score to say, well, based on the candidate's performance, which has been stored, he is worthy, or his performance is worthy of a 6 out of 10. Okay, let's go on here. Right. So basically, what this will be is a form of backup. This software will be used in the case of a dispute, and that's the whole point of it. And the final issue is, yes, there are some possible drawbacks. First of all, what should be the data corpora, or what speech samples should be used? Should it be exclusively native speakers? A big issue would be differences in microphone quality and ambient noise. this can severely affect the recording performance and the ASR processing performance. And of course, there'll be a need to train CSEC oral examiners on this new technology. Here is some further reading. And yep, I think I have just about overstayed my welcome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
I now invite our next presenter, Dr. Kim Gordon, to make his presentation. Dr. Gordon.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Let's begin. This presentation will provide an overview of a reimagined and re-engineered education model that utilizes artificial intelligence, augmented adaptive learning technology at its core. Let's first look at the education model typically in use today. All students are locked into the same sequence from start to finish. The timeline for completion is preset, and slower students are often left behind, while faster students are often lost to boredom. Grades are the only measure of progress in this one teacher to many students model. The first iteration of adaptive learning technology utilized pre-testing to tailor the materials to the learner's needs and allow them to conclude the class at their own pace. Mastery of topic is often used as the measure in this personalized education model. Artificial intelligence augmented adaptive learning technology further enhances individualized personalization. The education model begins to represent more of a mind map, as the learner is free to explore the topic and related fields of study. Mastery is the measure of success in this one teacher to one student model. About mastery, an important component then in AI augmented adaptive learning technology is the concept of mastery. First pioneered by Benjamin Bloom in 1984, Bloom compared traditional instruction to a highly personalized model in which the learner was free to pursue mastery at their own pace, no timelines. Although the learner all along is being supported with an individualized tutor, the results were dramatic. Although too expensive at the time for implementation, AI-ALT can achieve Bloom's vision. When we research the peer-reviewed literature regarding artificial intelligence augmented adaptive learning technology, we discover a growing number of studies regarding the development and design of AI augmented ALT. This slide represents a very few of these studies. These studies are listed in the final slide in the reference section for your future research. When we look at the EdTech market for AI/ALT solutions, we discover a rapidly growing base of tools that are available today. So we find that AI/ALT is highly effective in solving Bloom's Sigma 2 problem. There is a growing number of peer-reviewed studies on AI/ALT. There is escalating variety of AI/ALT software companies with robust tools for education. So what's the problem? It's an issue of how we are attempting to use these powerful education tools. Let's look at the typical learning environments of today. Whether in a traditional brick and mortar setting or a LMS supported e-learning course, both of these approaches are one teacher to many student models. These models are measured typically by grades, locked into standard timelines, and locked into standard content. AI-ALT, on the other hand, re-engineers the learning experience with a one teacher / alt to one student implementation. This is key. This results in a highly personalized environment based upon mastery and the learner's interests and their needs. There are no preconceived timelines. There are no preconceived grades. And thus, this represents a true one teacher AI-ALT to one student model. When we compare the traditional model to AI-ALT, we find these two approaches simply are not compatible. To date, AI-ALT has been attempted to be used in a traditional one teacher to many students model simply by bolting it on. This is not how this technology works. As we move forward into the 21st century, we have powerful EdTech tools available to us today. We can build a new education model that encourages individual mastery of topics in a one teacher to one student model. So, building a student-centric environment with ALT achieves many of the learner's personalized requirements. We have the learner central to the education process. They are supported by a dedicated teacher or teachers and an AI that is focused exclusively on their path to mastery. This environment is very comprehensive and focused solely on that learner, and it meets many of their requirements, but not all of them. With the learner-centric to the education setting and combined with other 21st century technologies, we can greatly expand this core model of the learner being centric to the process, being supported by human educators, and utilizing the AI-ALT system as the assistant teacher providing personalized instruction. We can now build a peer-reviewed repository of education materials, and we can support the learner with subject matter education experts who can be from around the globe. And this is an augmentation to the online teacher, the direct teacher, to provide them SMEs from around the planet to support them in the learner's success. We can add a variety of support systems and data tools that are all dedicated, once again, to the learner's success. The system can monitor the learner's overall well-being and connect them to an extended group of subject-focused students. Lastly, the system can be concerned about infusing the learner with critical thinking, media literacy, and other skills that are necessary in the 21st century demands of a collaborative workforce. Such a model is highly personalized, supports mastery, provides emotional support when and where needed, connects a global network of learners and experts, is supported by subject matter educational experts, is driven by a common education content library that is continuously peer-reviewed and updated, supports the teacher in providing just-in-time education, creates an AI model that is dedicated solely to the individual, and the learner succeeds. We could build this now. I'll conclude with a quote from a student from my research. ALT would have allowed me to follow my passion at my own pace. That's important. This system would have eliminated the feeling of me being a failure. This student changed their major because they could not get past One class. They attempted it numerous times. One class, same content, same instructor. With AI, ALT educational model, this needs to never occur again. If the student has the passion and the ability, then who cares if it takes them a week, a month, 6 months, or a year to master that topic? Let's help them become master learners. Additional information is on this slide if you'd like to remain in touch. And I thank you. The final slide are our references. Now, see if I can figure out how to turn the camera on. Am I there? I think I came in right at 10 minutes. My pleasure.
I now invite our final presenter, Mr. Vince Naidoo, to make his presentation. Mr. Naidoo.
Great. So it's interesting to be last on a panel where Dr. Carmichael focused on using artificial intelligence to improve assessment. So a very focused application of artificial intelligence. Dr. Gordon noted the use of adaptive learning technologies using AI to rethink how a system of education can look and the implementation of such a system. I want to kind of take a slightly elevated view and identify other applications of artificial intelligence in education and training and the role of microcredentials in that context. If we can go to slide 2, please. Thank you. So I thought it's helpful just to have a working definition or a working description of artificial intelligence. And here, for me, a very useful one is the study and design of intelligent agents, where an intelligent agent is a system that perceives its environment and takes action based on maximizing its chances of success. And the perception of the environment is really the data side of artificial intelligence. There's a whole host of other names, of course: computational intelligence, synthetic intelligence, computational rationality. The key thing here is about describing the property of a machine or a program and the intelligence that the system within this demonstrates. We already know that many of the products and services that we use today is already leveraging artificial intelligence to improve the experiences that we have. Amazon, for example, uses machine learning and artificial intelligence built in to recommend products that you and I basically request and pay for. Everybody from your big name IT companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, all use speech to text conversion and optimization, which allows them to know exactly what you're looking for and how to make sure you get information around it, whether it's through your email or when you suddenly searching for something, all of you get a range of pop-ups that indicate, this is what I've been looking for. Gartner, in some of their research, predicts that by this year, 85% of customer service interaction would be driven by artificial intelligence bots. Maybe that prediction will change a little bit given the COVID situation, but certainly I think the message is clear that artificial intelligence is going to drive a lot of what we do. Another report notes that 20% of business content, including training content, will be written by artificial intelligence. In addition, the Bank of America predicts that artificial intelligence will drive between 14 to 33 trillion annually in terms of economic growth by 2025. So we can see at a macro level where artificial intelligence is playing a role and where it's likely to continue to play a role. But let's talk a bit about what does it mean for us in the education system, and I will focus a little bit on the post-secondary level. If we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So for this part, I've used an article by Dom Bernard that appeared in the Virtual Speech website in 2019. So this is pre-COVID, and other articles and experiences to inform this presentation. I think that the key message is, as education professionals, we need to stay on top of this fast-changing technology world And how do we optimize this world and these new technologies to enhance the learning experience and the learning outcomes? How do we develop new learning strategies and methodologies that take advantage of these improvements, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence? In the area of skills training, for example, AI can dramatically shorten the learning process and suggest only specific modules that a particular employee or learner would need to improve their skills for the job that they're doing. Any artificial intelligence system in this way would have learned the user's strengths and weaknesses, and of course, their learning preferences. And this is where micro-credentials start to become a factor in the way we use artificial intelligence and micro-credentialing in the education system. So let me highlight a couple of them. For example, in credential validation, at the institution that I'm with, SAIT, they use blockchain and artificial intelligence in a way that allows the convergence of blockchain and artificial intelligence to enable machine learning and enable artificial intelligence to create and deliver education. The way we've used blockchain at SAIT is to look at storing and to have secure storage and sharing of data, in this case, credentials that our learners achieve. So we've been using blockchain for a number of years now to validate and to provide a secure platform for learners and corporations with the approval of the learner to access credentials. It's a mechanism of allowing the sharing of credentials, knowing that's safe and it's secure. Content creation. Dr. Gordon spoke about the value of one-on-one or individualized learning engagement. Gone are the days where students need to learn the same course content. Content can now be personalized to suit the learner needs and focus on weaker areas of the learner, recommend suitable content based on past behavior, predict needs based on their role, and even auto-generate content using various content creation algorithms. Again, a very useful way in which artificial intelligence can be driven or created to enable content creation and the right content to be curated for the learner needs. In that sense, it also addresses different learning styles. And we know learning styles impact on the development of learning solutions. We heard about that from Dr. Carmichael. And for me, the importance of different learning styles being addressed talks very much to the way in which millennials are looking at how they see the job environment. Millennials rate training and personal development as a #1 job benefit, and they want things personalized to them. If corporations recognize this and start deploying artificial intelligence to train employees by optimizing the content to suit the learner's learning style, this will make that kind of ability to keep millennials and others in the workforce, allow for their development to take place and create value will be very high. We've talked about personalized learning experience already, and I'm going to just focus on the fact that a learning management system can to learners, but it can also curate this. It can use data analytics to decide what content each learner is looking for. So while there's a cohort of learners in a course, the ability for artificial intelligence to curate what's needed for each learner is extremely valuable in terms of creating this personalized learning experience. Online assessments, we've already had an example of how artificial intelligence could influence online assessments and the ability to cater for different kinds of contexts that a learner finds themselves in, and allows for that context to be taken into account when looking at what competencies a learner could achieve or is achieving. Shortening the learning process. Artificial intelligence could dramatically shorten the learning process by suggesting specific modules the employee needs to improve their skills for the job that they're doing. And this specific modules is also known as microcredentials. Rather than study a whole 1-year degree or diploma or 3-year degree, one can look at identifying these specific modules, and these could become a microcredential. There's a component that AI can be used to enhance employee training. And I've spoken about this in terms of individualizing the training, identifying specific needs that's required. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Clearly, an important part of this is improving completion rates. We know that completion rates for online learning as one avenue for learning is very poor. With machine learning and training the AI and a trained artificial intelligence system, one can provide only relevant training resources and content in the format that the learner wants. And this should dramatically increase completion rates. A key part of this is accessibility for all learners. You know, we've seen Microsoft's Seeing L as an app that allows the app to narrate the world around you, and it allows people with poor visibility to actually give it a sense of what is around them, and where the app describes people, text, and I've just got a note to say that I need to wrap up. So let me look at AI-based digital tutors. Again, an important component where one can get a personalized tutor and equivalent to a chatbot to help complete certain courses and actually speed up. And there's been research here by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, that allowed them to use a digital tutor to improve the capabilities of their Navy recruits in becoming experts in certain technical skills. AI is also useful for creating digital training content. Again, I've spoken about that in terms of finding and building training programs we know is time consuming, and often organizations resort to buying training content. With the help of AI, content can automatically be created and sourced from a variety of places, the internet and other places. And so another example of that, eliminating bias. Again, the first speaker on the panel noted this way in which artificial intelligence could help eliminate some bias. The important thing here, though, is that bias can still creep in when training the AI and machine learning models, as predefined variables and data sets is still chosen by the human being. Upskilling with AI is also useful. And here, a key part of this upskilling is through the use of AI and machine learning to provide employees with the relevant content that they need. So let me talk a little bit about microcredentialing. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So microcredential is a small, shareable, competency-based credential that recognizes and is used to validate the acquisition of some specialized in-demand knowledge and skill. With that understanding, we know that in the workforce, there's unprecedented need for change. There's a critical skills gap, and it impacts any company's ability to meet the talent needs, to perform against certain standards, and to meet the strategic goals. Being able to create micro-credentials are one way in which we can meet this demand for very specialized, very niche skill set. And micro-credentials offer a quick, versatile option to develop these core competencies and to validate their acquisition and to allow one to stack these that potentially lead to different kinds of credentials and potentially diplomas and degrees. So there's clearly a great value to a micro-credential. The value is offering quick and cost-effective ways to obtain in-demand knowledge. There's a value with respect to how industry and employers can verify the skill set that a person is coming with. It enables individuals and employees to work together to identify and develop training solutions that meet the needs of both the learner as well as the goals of the employer. Micro-credentials can be secure, portable, and shareable asset that learners can use to promote their skills. And finally, a micro-credential actually provides students with a greater flexibility and incentive to upskill and reskill over their lifetime of learning. And for me, this is perhaps the most important part and perhaps the greatest way in which we're bringing artificial intelligence and micro-credentials together in a way that allows, from a learner perspective, the greatest value to be achieved in terms of the learner need for particular skills and knowledge, and the ability to use that to progress, whether it's within the secondary, but especially in the post-secondary arena and in the world of work. Let me stop there, Chair, and thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to provide this macro picture of artificial intelligence and its value to and the role it plays in bringing microcredentialing into this picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Viz Naidoo. I'll now ask all three presenters in this roundtable to put their cameras on. We have some time constraints, so we have a number of questions from participants. We have selected 2, and all participants, please feel free to continue sending questions and they'll be answered after. But for time constraints, we've selected 2. So we'll have 1 question going to Dr. Gordon and Mr. Viz Naidoo to provide 2 different perspectives on this question, and the third question will be for Dr. Carmichael. So the first question is, and I will direct it to Dr. Gordon. How can small islands developing states with limited resources begin to use and integrate the use of artificial intelligence into their education system? Dr. Gordon?
Budgeting is an issue that I've been well aware of. I think what we're going to have to do as a society is understand that there is a common, and I refer to it as the mastery engine, a common resource of human knowledge that needs to be shared. And that, I just said a mouthful, right? So financially, I think what a small institution or a small economy could do at this stage is start to align themselves with the standardization committees. For example, the IEEE has a focus group on the use of adaptive learning, as well as the Association of Computing Machinery has a special interest group focused on it as well, and begin developing partnerships and relationships with those in the industry. As you saw on my slide, there are dozens of ALT augmented companies in the marketplace right now. And quite honestly, I think they'd be very interested, many of them, in doing some experimental modeling, because all of this is new territory. So instead of thinking of them trying to just sell you a product, think of them trying to help all of us position an idea and make it successful. Hopefully I answered that.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. So, Mr. Naidoo, the question came from Santa Louis Community College of St. Lucia, and we're invited to provide a different perspective. Mr. Naidoo.
Thanks, Mr. Prime. I think absolutely Dr. Gordon identified the challenge of budget and the issues that face small island nations. I fully agree in the context of developing proof of concepts as one way to test and do this as a collaborative approach. The key thing is, once we develop these proof of concepts and show some value to the education system, it's about then building the system, and it's about how do you integrate it into the system. And that's always going to be a challenge with limited budget. And I would argue that one of the key ways to do that is to ensure that there is pockets of excellence building, and there's a strategy around building those pockets of excellence amongst different levels of the education system, and do that in an incremental way. Sure, it may take a bit longer. Do it in an incremental way that allows people to get on board, because the last thing you need in trying to look at ways in which with minimal budget to try and use all of what artificial intelligence could offer is to have this top-down approach. But rather, if you can create these pockets of excellence and work to improve that over time and build it into the system, you're getting good usage out of it, rather than having something imposed and then very few people actually use it.
Thank you, Mr. Naidoo. Dr. Carmichael, your question is coming from Mauricia Alexander Wilkinson. How will the ASR software account for the variations in accents across the Caribbean with a short learning time to ensure fair play, especially if the student is being marked against the native language speaker?
Excellent question. And that, as I said in my penultimate slide, that is the issue. First of all, what should be the gold standard? This is a big issue in any ASR system. For example, I'm sure that some of you have used ASR applications, maybe in your laptops. And you know, if you speak with an American accent, then everything's all right. It's all understood. You know what I mean? You speak a little Trinidad accent and the whole thing going crazy. No, there's obviously, I mean, the programmers and the system analysts were obviously training the software for themselves. I mean, go figure. No, when it comes to an impartial and an objective and fair assessor of a student's performance in a foreign language, I would say that theoretically, it should be a native speaker. Now, which region, for example, should the speech samples be trained on a speaker from Venezuela, Colombia, Puerto Rico? There are some who would say that Puerto Ricans don't really speak Spanish. That's a different story. And that's a very good question. I would say that Venezuela is probably our most influential Caribbean Spanish-speaking neighbor. So I would say that the data or the speech sample should be biased towards Venezuelan speech. But hands up, that's what I think. The biggest problem is the training data or the ambient conditions of the speaker. Easily, for example, there's an air conditioning unit in my room right now. Even an air conditioning unit can cause problems. A draft coming through the examination hall can be a problem. It's very, very brittle in that way. But it is certainly better than having no recordings at all. I am very serious about this. This is scandalous. Just this year at CXC, this year, 2 months ago, there was massive dissatisfaction about the CXC gradings. I personally know a friend of mine's daughter. There was no possibility of any retake or of any remarking. The person did their oral response, was marked, apparently unfairly so, but what can be done? At the very least, let us have digital recordings of CXC oral responses, and then we can throw in some ASR toys as we like. But seriously, CXC, get your act together. You know what I mean? Thank you very much for that question.
Okay. As they say in the local parlance, it varies from country to country. So
True.
I want to thank all presenters in this roundtable.